Hey everybody, Blaise here, and I'm very close to finishing my latest How to Draw Animals course, and it's on how to draw bears. Now many of you know that I've got a special relationship with bears because I co-directed the Disney animated film Brother Bear. So I've been drawing bears for a long time. I kind of know them inside and out, and I've had a lot of fun doing it. This course is going to be absolutely jam-packed. First of all, just like in my other courses, I'm going to start with, look at this right here. I've got skulls. I've got all kinds of fun anatomy. So I'm going to start with the anatomy of the head, and I'm going to build it up just like we do with our other, if you've seen my Big Cat course and my How to Draw Horses course, we start with these skulls and we build outwards. I show you how to build the anatomy on top. From there, I talk about the musculature on the rest of the body. Then I'm going to get into the paws and legs, because bears have very distinct paws and feet and how they work. And then I'm going to get into the full body and putting it all together and showing bears in different, in action and different poses. Now, as far as species go, I'm going to cover grizzlies, polar bears, black bears, panda bears, and then I'm going to touch on a whole bunch of other bears, all the rest of the bears basically that are from around the world. I'm also going to hit cubs, and just like in my other videos, I'm going to pull from my animation background and I'm going to talk about locomotion. So I'm going to show you some bear walks and some bears running. And they're quite a bit different than other four-legged animals, so we'll have some fun with that. Also, if you are a member of my website, creatureartteacher.com, you will make sure you check your emails, because you're going to have access to the first 7 videos that I've done so far. So get out there and check your emails. They're going to be available either today or tomorrow, so make sure you check that. And just like I've done on the other courses, I want to give everybody at least a taste of what I've done. So here today, I want to give you a sneak peek of one of my videos. It's a full video. It's going to be, I think it's number 4 in the course, and it's on how to draw grizzly full bodies. So I'm going to take you through all the different poses and open mouths and growling and all that kind of stuff. So we'll have some fun with that. So I just want to give you that, and like I said, if you want early access to these other videos, then check out creatureartteacher.com, my website, and check into getting a membership. Not only will you have early access to my videos, you're going to have access to everything that I have on the website. Everything that I offer, you'll have access to. So today, I hope you enjoy this sneak peek on how to draw grizzly bodies. And once again, look for, in the next couple of weeks, the entire course coming out. And if you remember, check your emails. You're going to have access to the first 7 videos. I hope you enjoy this one, and I'll talk to you later. Bye. Okay, so far we've done heads, we've done the muscles of the bear, of the grizzly bear, and we've also done the feet. And so now I think we've got all the details down. Why don't we go ahead and just have some fun and draw grizzly bears? I just thought I'd like to sit down and just draw a whole bunch of different poses for you. We can talk proportion, we can talk flow, we can talk rhythm, all that kind of stuff. We can talk fur textures, and let's just dive right in. All right, so I've got a little document ready, and let's just go ahead and start drawing. Let's start with something simple. I'd like to start with a bear that's just standing on its, in a profile, just standing, maybe sniffing the air, and we can get some nice, proportion. So I always like to start with the head, as you know. I start with that circle. And I usually like to kind of flow off of that. So I go into the neck, into that big hump. Remember that, there's those big, big shoulders. And that neck, if you were to imagine coming through the shoulders, should flow into the back side, into the back. And there's a pretty substantial hump right there that goes into the back. And then that comes down, and we're gonna get, there's a little bit of a break here sometimes with the hips. Well, the hip is up here, but right in here, right where the trochanter is. Remember we talked about the trochanter. Imagine the belly coming down. So I want to do a nice, simple shape like so. Remember, bears have a big chest. And this neck should be fairly long. Imagine that scapula coming down. Remember that shoulder is here, and I want that shoulder to be kind of even with where the chest is. Front part of that shoulder. And notice I'm trying to keep everything nice and fluid. Remember, we got big muscles here. Triceps, all those triceps coming down. Remember the elbow is way down here, down low. A big upper arm, like so. And it comes in, remember it cuts under right here. And we'll get a foot there. And let's have this bear kind of stepped forward a little bit. I want to clear out the silhouette. I want to clear the silhouette out. Maybe that foot is just coming off the ground like that. And here, some of that fur might come out like that. There we go. But let's finish out the head. Remember, that skull is going to come down. Thinking about that skull underneath, there's that bit of a forehead, just a bit. And then there's the break where the cartilage starts in the nose. I'm just quickly drawing in that profile. Lip comes out. There's that nose right there. Let's blow this up a little bit. Remember that mouth comes right about in here. Right about in that area right there. I'm going to shrink up this eraser. And you got a nice lip underneath. And remember that we got the square and the round. I always think about that. And then that, if we were to draw that jaw coming back, it comes back in here. But this beard will start right there. That beard starts up high. Ears. Here I have those ears kind of perked forward. There we go. Actually, I'm going to clear that out. Let's turn them this way a little bit. There we go. And remember, I like to have off the ears is where I do that fur direction change. And what I like to do is usually with the bears, you'll see as that fur comes down, there tends to be a kind of a bigger break in here. And then you get a lot of, and then remember the muscles that come down right in here? I like to kind of follow that a little bit with some of the fur, mimic a little bit of that. It just makes it dynamic. I like having that line coming in. And we're going to get, there's a lot of breaks in the fur up in here. Okay. Let's finish out this head though. So then we've got the eyes really small, remember? Really small. And you got that break right there in the, remember that the shape of the muzzle as it sits across the face comes down like that. The nose is in here. And then the eyes sit right in that little break right there. Remember that? And the face is pretty flat. Those eyes need to look forward because they're predators. And that cheekbone is fairly strong. Got a lot of fur direction coming back like this. There's a cut in here into the muzzle. And all of this is strong, kind of shaggy fur. And it all kind of comes back in this direction and meets up with fur that's kind of going in this direction and creates this ridge in here. Like so. There. So now we've got, so if I erase out that little guiding line, you'll see we get this interesting kind of negative shape in there that I really like, where that skull just sits. And you got all this muscle sitting on top of, or all the fur sitting on top of all this muscle. Remember all the different muscles? Can you remember that? Sitting on the, there's that scapula. Remember, this is the trapezius muscle right in here. Coming off of there, it feeds into the deltoids down in here, and then your triceps down in here, and then all this leads into the flexors down in there, like so. Just a quick review. And then let's get this fur nice and strong coming off of there. Remember, we got the little bags coming off the eyes, the lids. And usually there's a little bit of fur coming off of that, right off of that eye, right off the, coming around forming that brow. Nice broken fur up here. And I like to indicate just a little bit of a break in here. And imagining, you know, remember those big canines are underneath there, so that muzzle is going to bulge a little bit in there. You get a bit of a hollow in there. And I'm just going to darken that up a little bit. So you get a nice, there's a nice shape right there. And all of this fur works its way back, like so. But I'm getting detailed up here. Let's go ahead and finish roughing it out. So we've got this coming back. Remember, you got your latissimus muscle underneath the skin here, your serratus muscles. All of this is going to be shaggy, coming off the back right there. Remember, all the fur coming off this way. There's that trochanter. The hip is right here. All the leg muscles come down, femur, right into the knee, right down in here. And I'm going to break up that fur and just let that kind of just run straight back like that. And then that's going to go into the calf muscle. And remember, and let's do this. Let's just draw a straight line right across. That way we can get our feet nice and accurate, because I'm drawing that back leg coming down a little too low. So let's start breaking this in here. I'm going to put an ankle right there. That heel is going to come off the ground just slightly. Remember, the back feet are kind of club shaped. There we go. And then I'm going to have, I'm imagining the hip on the other side, maybe the knee right here, coming down and drawing through calf down into the foot here. And it's, remember, they're kind of turned in towards each other. I always imagine them turned in towards each other. And all of this is going to be extra fur. So notice how the back hump, I'm just going to do a quick review here. So there's our bear roughed out. So notice that the hump, you get a nice rhythm coming off the neck into the hump, into the rear end. You know, these three kind of curved shapes against this nice fluid shape coming off of here, okay? And notice how the whole thing just curves. It just kind of curves. We get that nice flow. Even though bears are big and bulky, you want to make sure that there's still some fluidity to the pose, some rhythm, okay? Also, I'm going to jump back here real quick while we're here. I just want to indicate in the fur, that quadricep muscle. There we go. The thigh muscles and calf, fur, there. Coming up there. All right, but notice how the hump, especially on a grizzly, that hump is really predominant and it sticks up higher than the back end, okay? And it's really almost as high, you know, if the bear is sitting up. I mean, it's close to being as high as the back of the neck up here, going into the head. I can't resist adding fur. I just enjoy doing this. There we go. All right, so now notice that shoulder comes forward and we've got these, the meat of the forearm, as these flexors come in, they connect down in here underneath the fur, and there's definition in here. And I'm gonna let that come down into the wrist. Got the pad right here. I'm gonna let that fur just come back like that. The same here, there's mass. I'm just going nice and clean right now. There is breaks in the fur, but for this drawing, I want it to be nice and clean against all this nice broken up fur. So you get all this flow. Remember how that flow comes back off the front. From the elbow into those really big tricep muscles. They're just huge. And the armpit comes way up like that. And then we get lots of breaks in the fur. You get like those negative shapes in the fur coming this way. It's not ribs, it's the fur breaking up into clumps. And then sometimes you'll get like little breaks in here, like so. So let's go ahead and lighten that up just slightly. And I'm gonna redraw, drawing the details. So fur coming down, the shape of that ear, remember the shape of that ear is like this. It's got this scoop shape to it, like that. Fur coming down. Remember, this fur is going to come down into here, just like that. Comes down, just like in there, all right? And then that comes back. I'm just going to draw the fur now. Actually, I'm going to let this be a little bit more, dominant. And I'm just lightening up that underdrawing a little bit. So I don't have to carry the detailed drawing too much. And I just want to really break up some of that fur and the shoulders. There we go. I'm going to keep this nice and clean. So there's that brow that's in the skull, coming down to the nasal opening. This is all cartilage, remember? Coming down into that nose, remember that cuts in, like so. And then all of this kind of comes out. Get this nice kind of complex nose shape happening right in there. And I like, you know, if you remember the skull, those teeth come down. If we were to draw underneath, that teeth is the front canine, top canine sitting there. The bottom canine sits right up in there, like that, looking at it from the side. Coming down like this. And there's broken, you'll break that up with some fur. Dark lips. Like this. And then that round chin. And That all leads right into there. So let's let this fur come up in here. Remember the cheek? That cheekbone actually comes up like in there, but it forms this nice frontal plane. And the eye is going to sit right here. Eyelids coming down like so. And that fur comes back, and it all kind of grows in this direction, coming off the top of the head. And we're going to get some definition right in there. And that comes in for the tooth, for the canine. This shape here, that's the canine underneath. And let's get this beard fur. I always call it the beard fur. That comes back. I like finding really interesting positive and negative shapes. I like having, like I said, I like having that negative shape right in here, kind of delineates the separation between the head going into the neck. And remember, we got this two directions of fur coming together right in here. And you get a little bit of a hollow in here. That gets a little dark. Okay? Then this fur comes back. And I'm just generally drawing fur. I want to follow kind of this muscle line coming back down. Some of this fur kind of breaks this way. I'm not drawing the direction of the fur. I'm drawing actually the breaks in the fur, the negative spaces between the fur. Down in here, it's still growing this way. You just get these clumps. I go like that. I'm going to bring this up. And we're going to bring all of this fur right on down in, right into here. Right off the back of the neck, or the underside of the neck, I should say. There. I'm trying to keep, as I'm drawing, I'm trying to keep that fur direction varied and accurate, but also I'm trying to keep the way that I'm portraying the fur. You notice I'm laying it down in different clumps. And I'm finding areas to be a little darker, a little lighter, and that'll give it depth. So and since this is the underside of the neck, that's kind of in shadow, I'm giving it a little bit more line work just to indicate as if it's in shadow. And then as I come up, I'll show less and less fur texture. But since we've already created fur texture down here in the bottom of the neck, it gives the illusion that there's fur all the way up. And I'm just going to add some fur. Let me bring this down a little bit. I'll add some fur coming up here so it just doesn't feel so outlined. It'll actually give it some volume coming off of there. So if I shrink that up, you can see we've got a nice feel happening with that fur. Just like that, okay? And I think we can still go a little darker in here. There. Just like so. So let's come up in here. I'm going to finish this off. Remember, we've got all of this is muscle coming off of here. There's a lot of muscle coming off of that shoulder blade. Remember, trapezius muscle, deltoids, triceps. I'm kind of drawing in negative shapes between the fur clumps. Actually, this one I don't like. It stands out a little too dominantly, and I'm drawing the fur in slightly the wrong direction. I want that fur to be radiating out, and it should start coming down in this direction here. It's all following, it's going out towards the extremities. And let's put a couple breaks in here and that shoulder coming down. There. And that comes up into those the triceps. And I'm just going to lightly indicate them just through where I indicate the fur. There we go. You can indicate a little fur coming this way. There we go. That feels good. And I'm going to have this come down, and I'm just going to put a couple of breaks in here, but I want to keep it generally fairly clean. I still want some fur up in here to kind of, I want to lightly indicate that transition from the neck into the shoulder mass. There. You can kind of see that transition. And I want to do the same thing with the back of the arm. And then there's also this. I want to get rid of this a little bit because I want to bring this up into the flexor muscles that are going to come down like that. But let's jump over here real quick. I'm just going to, because I want this ultimately to be dark back here. I don't want it to flatten out. I want this to still be dominant. But we've got fur texture, or fur kind of coming this way, because this is all this feeds into the chest, into the pectoralis muscles. It's all kind of coming forward. If you were to reach forward, your pectoralis muscle comes forward on your shoulder. And it's the same thing on this bear here. And we'll come down into the wrist. Once again, coming into the muscles of the forearm, and those flexors. Let's draw that fur just coming right back. There. You notice I'm following, kind of letting it radiate out. I'm following the rhythm of the arm. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Letting that fur kind of radiate out. It comes straight down here. It's a little shorter. And then it just comes right out. We get the breaks here. Let's put that pad right in there. Comes down into the foot, into the hand, paw. That fur just comes right back. There we go. See, by having that underdrawing, it really helps. I'm actually going to come in here real quick. Just lightly erase that back so that underdrawing, the line cutting through, isn't so dominant. But I don't want to erase it all the way because I want you to, to remember that. And let's come in here. We'll get some of these fur breaks. But let's finish up the feet. Comes right down to the pad. Remember, you can if you wanted to indicate some of the tendons coming down, you can. But remember, there's a lot of fur right here. But I like to push the anatomy sometimes. So there's that pinky toe, finger, claw. Those claws kind of point, they start going up. And then let's do the next toe with a claw. Lots of fur coming off. All of this is fur. One more toe we're going to indicate, maybe another claw just barely, and then the other toes are back there kind of wrapping around. So there's the 1 foot there. We can let this, maybe this gets a little darker. You got that fur texture coming off. That feels pretty good. So let's come back up in here. Fur coming down. Now the wrist is kind of relaxed. See how we got a break in the wrist? I'm going to put that pad in there. And then off the heel of the paw. And we're going to have the toes right in here, coming back like that. Let some of this fur come down, and it all kind of feeds into this area right here. And once again, let's get that, let's blow that up a little bit. I'm going to color those in just ever so lightly. There's that heel, not the heel, but the pad of the palm there coming up. There's a claw there. Then the next one here. Then I'm kind of just going to let them kind of fade out as we go back. So there's that other foot, okay? And once again, that fur is pretty much, it follows along here, just pretty much goes straight, then it kind of starts to fade off this way and radiate around, and then it all kind of just grows out in this direction here. So you get some nice volume. You can start to feel that volume happening. And I want to do the same thing in here. I like to indicate some of those plane changes and the muscle changes just by adding a little bit of line of fur. There. Just like that. All right, so now we got the front end of the body. Remember, it just all started with this very loose drawing, but we're just covering stuff that we already know. Now let's come up, get that back end a little shaggy. It is a grizzly bear. Their fur tends to be a little grizzled. I want to hit that little break in the hip. And just like the front feet, I want to get the backs of the legs a little bit frazzled, a little bit furry, coming off there. There we go. Remember that trochanter is right in here. I'm going to let this come down. Maybe give it a little definition. Some definition going into the thigh. Then you got the knee down in here. The hip is up in here. I'm going to just indicate that with a little fur. And then we're going to go into the belly. And all of this is going to be broken up fur. But you can see we're getting some interesting definition. And then I'm just going to keep this really, that's getting a little too repetitious for me. Beware of doing things like this. You know, you breaking it up in that way. It gets too repetitious. It looks like a saw blade. So see how I have it more random up in this area here. And so that's the goal. You want it to feel broken up, but not repetitious. There. That feels better. Some of that fur will just come back. I'm going to just let this, I'm just going to get in here, get kind of dark with it. You know, grizzly bear's fur, you know, especially when it gets wet, it kind of clumps together into these triangular shapes. Those are the general shapes that the fur kind of clumps into. And then here, these are the big negative shapes that it's breaking into. And then all of this, it all just radiates back. The direction of the fur just radiates back. There we go. Just draw all that fur in there. So that's good enough for now. All right. So then let's jump down here. We'll finish off this leg. Got a little bit of fur break coming down here. I'm going to kind of silhouette that leg, meaning when I finish the drawing here, I'm going to add some light and shadow. I will just come down. Maybe there's a little bit of an ankle in there, but I just really want to focus on the silhouette. Although I am going to indicate the toes. Those little toenails. It comes around. There we go. And let's just come down. Get all this broken up fur shapes up in here. There we go. Remember, you can do all of this, even though I'm doing this digitally. I've created a brush here that I'm using to act like a pencil. This is one of my own brushes that I have on the website, one of my custom brushes. And it's from my original set. It's brush number 7, and it really works well. I get some great effects, but it just feels like a pencil. But if you're using Photoshop, you can just use, in the preset brushes, they have pencils, and they work great. Or if you're following along with paper, this is just keep your pencil sharp. And this is what, this is what I'm trying to emulate. I'm going to bring this up just a little bit. I want that calf muscle to come down like that. So there's the grizzly bear, just like so. All right, so we've got all the nice shapes. We've got the fur broken up nicely. We've hit all the areas that I want to hit. I'm going to go ahead and add some color. This is the only one we're going to really do any color with, because I want to do several drawings, but I just wanted to do something where you guys could see what I'm thinking about when I do a full bear. And let's go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and grab this brush. I'm just going to color them in here. There we go. And I want to get a nice brown. Grizzly bears can really vary in their color from really dark brown, almost black, to really light blonde. And they really vary in their size too. So coastal bears, a Kodiak bear, a brown bear, that's genetically basically the same bear as an interior grizzly bear that you might see at Yellowstone or Glacier National Park, or up in the Canadian Rockies. Now I'm painting everything in the same color right now. And then I'm gonna adjust some of that local color, but I'm adding the local color. I'm just putting something down just to add a little local color. There. And it's a, it tends to be kind of this toned, earthy, kind of warm brown. It's very rich, I think. There we go. Oh, that feels nice. But they can really vary in size. Coastal bears can be basically twice the size of their interior bears. And the reason for that is, the coastal bears get tons and tons of fish. They just get a lot of fish in their diet. That's a lot of fat, that's a lot of protein. Whereas the interior bears are scavenging, they're trying to, they're eating a lot of roots and plant material. They might get a ground squirrel here or there, but it's really just, fattening up on berries during the fall. One thing I did learn when I was in Alaska, though, every ground squirrel on average, 2,000 calories. That's it. So they get a ground squirrel, there's an extra 2,000 calories. So I thought that was interesting. All right, so we've got all of that laid in there. I'm going to go ahead and lock that in. I'm going to lock those pixels, so now I can kind of get really free with the drawing, with adding different color. Like I want to go, let's say we want to go a little blonder with it, a little lighter. And I'm going to drop the opacity down. Let's bring that down. So now I can kind of draw over the top of it, and it won't go outside the edge because I hit that checkerboard. It locks. I'm only drawing on the pixels that have already been painted on. So I want to make him a little lighter up on top, maybe a little lighter down and along here, maybe down along the arm. Might get something in here like so. There we go. Maybe it's a little bit along in there. Definitely in the face. In the face. There we go. That's while we're at it, while we're here, I'm going to go ahead and hit that muzzle or the nose. Nice cool color there. We'll hit that lip. There we go. Nice. Let's go a little bit lighter. And we'll go and hit some of the areas that get really light. He gets a lot of really light fur along the top. There, that feels pretty good. And then down, when we are down in the legs actually get dark. That fur can get really dark. So I'm going to just darken that up a little bit. Maybe there's a little dark fur underneath. Keep in mind, I'm not drawing light and shadow right now. I'm only drawing the local color, the actual color of the fur when it's not in light. We're going to add the shadows next. But I want that to be a little darker. And I want that to be a little darker. There. So there is our bear with just the local color added. And actually, let's go a little bit, hit the top of the head just a little bit, because I want the face to be a little darker. We'll go and hit some dark in here. There we go, just like that. So now I can go in. I'm going to set this to multiply. As you guys know, I like to do my shadows set to multiply. And I'm just going to come in here I'm just going to imagine the light kind of coming over our right shoulder. Let's bring that up. And I'm just going to go ahead and put that right into shadow. Right in here. But maybe it's coming into light, so maybe we'll get a little shadow along here, along the front, because the light's going to be kind of slightly behind. There we go. And then we'll get some nice shadow coming off this muscle mass coming down the neck. And this is all going to go into shadow in here. There we go. Shadow underneath. Shadow in front of the face. Maybe that casts a shadow right there. We'll put that under shadow underneath. Yeah, that feels pretty good. Get that a little lighter. There, down the front. And let's say that ear is casting a shadow like so. And that way the front will be in shadow. And then the front part of the head is in shadow. I'm going to pull that ear shadow back just a little bit. There we go. That feels good. And then we can have some fun like we did on some of the other ones. I can get in here and just add a little fur texture shadow. There. You know, there's shadow happening inside these clumps. And when you look into the fur, sometimes it gets really dark in here because you're looking into it. And that shoulder hump. There we go. There, that feels good. Actually, I'm going to change my brush up. Go back to my little pencil brush. Yeah, that feels better. Much better brush. Let's go ahead and save it while we're at it. There we go. Just adding more fur texture. There. Now let's go ahead and hit some of these shapes right here. This is going to be in shadow. We already hit all this. This is going to be in shadow coming down here because it's facing away from the light. We're going to get some deeper shadow down on the bottom of the belly. There we go. It's going to come up into these negative shapes. There we go. Hit some of those darker areas there. We're going to go into shadow underneath the foot there. This leg back here will be in shadow. There. And then we'll get some nice shadow happening in here. The front of the leg, coming around underneath the ankle, casting a shadow this way. and we get shadow underneath the foot and over here. And then I'm gonna get in, we'll get a little more detailed. I want to get some deep shadow in here. We'll get a little more detailed and we'll get some of those negative spaces. There we go. So there we are again. We're just kind of hitting where it should go dark. And once again, I'm looking, we're kind of in some places, especially along the back, you can see areas where it gets dark because you're looking into the fur. We're going to get a little bit more shadow here because it turns in. There we go. Getting some nice volume happening. Maybe there's a little bit of fur texture in here, just because I want to indicate a plane change. Once again, I felt a little bare there. I want to, no pun intended, I want to add a little bit of fur texture in there just because it feels like it needs it. I'm going to break some of this up there. I want this to gradually come up into fur textures. I don't want a hard line on that shadow. I want it to gradually come up. And then we'll get some nice textures down in here. There we go. Okay. All of this is coming up. So now you can really get a sense of the direction of the fur, how it's growing back. So there's the shadow. Let's go ahead and add some highlight, some lighter. I'm going to do overlay. We'll go a little lighter with it. And let's hit the areas that should be catching some light. I want to go a little lighter. Well, let's catch a little light in here, along in here, definitely along here, here, along that part of the lip. So you can see already we're getting a little bit of volume there. This part of the cheek. Let's hit some fur texture there. I just want to add right along the edges too. If you look at the photos, if you can see a bear in real life, that's great. But if you can't, look at photos of grizzly bears and you'll see that they have this along the edge, along the top edge, that light fur gets really light because you're looking along the edge, and that light fur kind of sticks out further than some of the deeper dark fur. And so when you look at along the top, that's all that's really sticking up, and so that's all you're seeing is this light fur, and it really catches the light. So you tend to get this kind of light halo around the bear. Just like that. And once again, like we did on our last video, I'm just catching some of the lighter areas in the clumps of fur. There. See how we get it, when you start playing with your values, you start getting some extra values in there, and you stay consistent with your fur direction, you get some great effects. And so now it's really starting to feel like fur. And we already started with that local color, so we get variations in the fur direction and variations in the fur color. There's warm and cool and light and dark. There we go, that feels good. Now let's hit some of these, this should be really kind of light along here. Now remember, we're gonna go one more step above this in our light. This is just to break that up, just a hair. We're just breaking up some of these values, just a hair, just a little bit. There we go. Now this is all going to be lighter because it's catching the most light, and this fur actually tends to get a little bleached out too. So it's facing the sun the most. So it'll get a little bit more bleached. There we go. That all feels pretty good. There. There, a bear. I love drawing bears. I really do. We drew thousands of them, thousands on Brother Bear. But one of my favorite parts of Brother Bear was doing the research. You know, we went to Alaska a couple of times. We went to Yellowstone. We went all over California. So we were researching not just the animals themselves, but we were researching locations. But one of my favorite experiences was a place called McNeil River in Alaska. And it's a state park, but it's a very dense population of grizzly bears, and it's very hard to get into. But because we were making a film, we were able to get in a little bit easier. And it's like I said, it's a huge concentration of grizzly bears. So we could see, we had to camp, and we could see at any given time, we could see probably 13 or 14 bears. You just poke your head out of your tent, or you just look around and you could just see them everywhere. So there's definitely a lot of rules in what we can and can't do as far as in order to keep the bears from, doing what bears do, which is go after animals that are lesser than them so they can eat. So they've been very careful in making it so that the bears have never associated people with food. All the food is locked up, and anyway, it was an incredible experience, and I've just never seen so many wild grizzly bears in all my life. We had a big 800-pound male come walking through our campsite one night. I sat on a log and drew them from life as they walked by me, mothers and cubs, and watched them catch salmon. So it was just an absolute amazing experience. That was at McNeil River. And they also went to Brooks Falls and drew bears there as well, which is, Brooks Falls is the place where everyone's seen the bear catching the salmon right out of the air, standing on the waterfall. That's Brooks Falls in Alaska. But anyway, so we've got I've got kind of the next layer of light fur in there, and let's go ahead and go one more layer. And I'm just going to lighten that up, and let's just go really blonde. And I'm going to bring this down in. So we got some nice stuff happening, but I just want to touch up. Whoops. I want to just shrink that brush up. So I want to hit just a couple of areas that might catch a little extra light. So this is the value that you want to be really tasteful with. You don't want to hit too much. Maybe there's a little bit along in here, catching a little bit of light. You don't want to hit too much. The muzzle is a little lighter, so I'm just gonna hit it. There we go, just like so. A little bit lighter fur coming out there. There, that feels nice. And like I was talking about earlier, I'm gonna kind of create a little halo of light fur around the upper part of the bear. I'm going to knock that opacity up. You just get this nice light halo of fur. So let's just draw that right in, right over the dark pencil lines. There we go. I'm just staying nice and loose. I'm going to let this kind of come right down into some of this. There we go. You can see it creates a nice effect. Now we're getting a really nice sense of light on him or her. Here we go. This one's not super bulky. It could be kind of an adolescent young male, or it could be a female. And I'm just going to let this one, the males, the big coastal grizzlies, they can get up to 1,200 pounds. I mean, just massive, massive animals. And I'm going to let that kind of just fade off. There, got nice light fur happening there, and I want to push this a little bit. This is going to be catching a fair amount of light. There we go, that comes down. And want to keep it random. Don't want to get too regular with it. So I want to make sure that I'm kind of being spontaneous. I don't want it to feel repetitious. This is going to catch, there's going to be a fair amount of lighter fur up in here. So you'll see I'm just kind of loosely, controlled looseness, laying this in. Keeping it nice and controlled. And I'm going to catch a little bit more in here, right over that trochanter. There. And that's how we draw a bear. And then let's get in here. Let's catch some of these clumps. You know, it might even catch a little bit down in here, just like we did along here on the neck. I might lay that back just a touch. There we go. Just erased it back, just a hair. There we go. There. We'll shrink that up. So there, we got some nice stuff happening. Now, I want to do one last thing, and we're going to add one last layer. We're losing some of the definition in here, and so I want to get a little bit of reflected light. So I'm going to grab that color, and I want to go cooler with it, and I'm going to go lighter with it. So now I can go in and just imagine some of this fur catching a little bit of light. I'm going to go a little cooler, a little bit brighter, catching a little bit of light, almost like reflected light. And what that does for me is it gives it a little bit more volume. I'm going to darken this up just that touch as we get into some of these darker areas. I don't want a huge value change in here. I just want enough that your eye can start to break up a little bit of what's happening back there. You get a little bit of cool light reflected off some of that fur. Over here, I do the same thing, just lightly, but I really want to focus it on the chest and neck area. There we go. There we go, that feels good. And let's do the same thing in the face. I'm going to blow this up. Following some of that form, hitting some of that fur. I'm going to define that eye just a little bit. There. And maybe it's catching just a little bit more right in there, catching a little highlight. And speaking of highlights, let's grab that color. Let's go with a nice kind of lighter blue with it. And come in here just lightly define that nose, catching a little bit of light. And it's going to catch a little bit here as well. There. Maybe that lip is catching a little bit right there. So there's our bear. I'm going to come in here though. I don't like that, what I did there. It's going to go a little lighter on that. There we go. On that eye. So there's our grizzly bear. So I've taken you through all the fur, all the rhythms of it. So there's, and I know that took a while, but let's go ahead and I want to draw a few more bears. I won't color them all. I just want to do some drawing, but I just wanted you to kind of see what I think about when I'm drawing the fur, the textures, the forms, all of that. So let's go ahead and save this. Okay, so I've got him adjusted up to the side here. Let's go ahead and turn that off for now. And let's just start doing a new one. Let's do something with a little more action to it. How about a bear? Well, let's just do one standing up because I know we haven't done that yet. Start with my circle. And I want a bear that's kind of looking off in this direction. There's the eye. It's going to be looking off in that direction. Big bulky neck. Remember, that's all, there's a lot of fur, a lot of muscle. I want to just get a nice shape to the body. Now, bear standing up, you know, all the weight isn't down at the bottom. They've got strong muscle that holds all the guts together. So when you get down to the legs, they've got fairly thin hips. So it kind of comes together like this. And the thighs come down into the calf. Like so. I know it looks weird, but it's about how they're built. Now, bears have really well-defined pectoralis muscles. They have a wide chest. There's that pectoralis muscle. Comes up into the shoulder, which is here. Like this. I'm going to let that center line come around. Forearm. And I'm just going to let that paw come in like that. And I don't want them both. I don't want to do any kind of twinning or anything like that. We can do this. I want to bring this down. Get the wrist here. There we go. Bring that in like so. When I say twinning, meaning I don't want the two sides to look the same. It just gets boring. It's bad drawing. Watch out for twinning when you're posing something out. I'm going to bulk up the bottom just a bit. There we go. Foot coming in here, a foot there. I'll just draw some grass in here. This bear's kind of up and sniffing the air. So you can see when I start out loose. Because I don't want to get really far down the road. I try to describe my planes like this. I don't want to get far down the road and discover that I'm rendering on something that is wrong. So at this stage, I'll look at my proportions, general shapes. You know, I'm not drawing lots of detail. I want to find my interesting breaks. Like I'm imagining like this shoulder coming up. So I want a nice strong break in here against this nice smooth transition over there. He's got his arm pulled up here. Strong foreshortening. And those claws coming together. Claws coming together here, here, here. And I'm trying to break up everything into simple shapes. Nice, smooth, fluid bar. There. So that feels pretty good. See the proportion? If you look at it, he's generally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 6 heads. And then if we wanted to tie it down, let's get in here and have some fun with it. So, once again, I'm going to start up here at the break of the nose. It's coming down. There's where the nasal break is. And that nose round on top, squared off on the bottom. And it it cuts in right here. Nostril, center line, and it cuts in here. There, just like that. Give some volume to that muzzle. Once again, I'm thinking about that, the canines under there, the lips. That jaw coming around, a break in there. Just like so. There, now let's pull that eye in. That eye is just a little too far out. There we go, little eyelids. That fur comes off. We got the brow. I'm going to let this part of the head come back around. We got the other brow over here and then have it cut in. So this comes up, that comes up. That feels a little funky though. I'm going to bring that down. One of the things I like to do, let's do this. I do this a lot. I'll flop my drawing and see it from a new light. So now I can go, oh, okay, this needs to come. If the eye is here, then I want to get this other eye over here and get this brow more over here like that. Now that feels better to me. It just enables you to see things just a little bit differently. Flopping your drawing. Just like so. All of this is growing out as fur. Let's go ahead and turn it back around. There. So we're drawing that face in there. I'm going to let that beard start just a little bit further up. And once again, this all is growing in this direction. There's the hollow of the ear. That comes down, back side of the ear comes down. And once again, all this fur is growing this way, trying to stay loose, but not messy. I'm trying to stay controlled. I'm trying to think about the planes. You know, this all kind of curls under. So I'm going to draw a little bit more fur there to indicate that. This is all growing out. I'm going to break this up a little bit. There. make that a little bit more opaque. And once again, all of this kind of comes down like this. There. And we'll just follow this down. Because we're just doing a quick drawing, I don't need to be, I'm not going to be as tight as I was on that last one. So I want you to see what I think about. Let's go ahead and color this in. There we go. Maybe a little darkness right in there. Give him a little life to his eye. There. And once again, just like we did with the other bear, I want to indicate this muscle coming down in here, and there's muscle coming down here, like we did. Remember, when we were talking about the bear head, you can feel in the body, you can feel that muscle coming down in your neck. Well, the bears have that same muscle. And as we get up into that shoulder, I want to indicate some of the breaks in the fur kind of follow that form. And you come right into here. If you feel right where your collarbone connects, it's right there in the top of the rib cage for the bear. They don't have the collarbone. There. And all of this fur is kind of coming down, and it all kind of comes down into this center line. And I like to use that center line to add flow, to get fluidity right there. See that? It gives it some nice fluidity. This is all going to be dark. There we go. Nice big mass, bulk, right in there. And we'll get some more fur breaking off of there. There we go. And once again, especially when we're looking at a lot of foreshortening, breaks in the fur like this, I like to use that fur to help me describe the form. There's that chest, definition for that pectoralis muscle, and then this all comes down right into that shoulder. This is all kind of shoulder meat right in here. That's all the negative spaces between the fur. You get a lot up in here, a lot, right there. So we're working our way down. And let's indicate that armpit in there. There's an armpit there. Notice how I'm loosely indicating that fur, the breaks in the fur, to help describe that form. And then all of this is going to be fur kind of growing off in this direction. There. There we go. Maybe there's a little break in there for that. Whoops. A little break in there for that, for the fingers. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. One, 2. I'll curl that one the other way. 4, or 3, 4, 5. There we go. And when you get in here, that fur is just kind of growing out, all clumpy down there like that. But let's do this paw now. There. Once again, I'm going to indicate that those chest muscles right in there. All of this fur kind of coming back like so. There we go. Once again, maybe there's a little break there where we go into the fingers. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Real simple. I do it very quickly, don't labor it. But I always make sure that my masses, the foreshortening like we have here, everything's lining up the right way. And then I want to get that shaggy belly. And this fur all kind of grows. Notice I'm going a little bit lighter to push that. I want the line work, the line weight to be lighter on the belly fur than what I've got here, just to show a little depth so that this paw will pop out in front. But all the fur kind of grows toward the center. And then you get a lot of, this skin is stretched right here when the bear stands up like that. And then the fur is really kind of clumped up, broken up into clumps in here because it's not used to being pulled in this direction. Bears don't stand up. I mean, they stand up a fair amount, but it's not something they do all the time. And here's the knee. Let's bring this up. There's the knee there. Calf coming down. So there's muscle here. I'm going to get all this broken up into fur. There's the knee. Muscle here. And then down into the calves. All that fur. Three, 4, 5. I'm just going to go very, very quickly. You can put an ankle there if you want. Thinking about the toes here. They're slightly, ever so slightly turned in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm just going to indicate the toes there, just very, very loosely. There. So there's our bear standing up. So you can get him to cast a little bit of a shadow. Definitely a shadow coming down underneath there. There we go, it's coming down. This will all go into shadow here. There. Shadow. This will cast a shadow coming up right under the arm. There, see that? Let's get some fur texture in there. The bottom part of that arm will go into shadow. Shadow underneath here. Down along in here. I'm thinking about the light source being off to the right again. I'm doing this extremely loosely, quickly. There we go. Maybe that's not so much in shadow. There we go. There's our bear standing up. Let's do this. Just to get him to pop a little better. There we go. Actually, I'll just go all the way around that head. Just get a little texture back there. There, our bear standing. So there's our grizzly bear standing. Let's put that into a folder. Okay, we've got that. Why don't we turn these off? Let's do another one. All right, let's do one in more action. So I'm just going to go really loose. And if I'm animating, this is how I'll draw. I'll draw really loose. I know, now that we know the proportions, I'm going to go, okay, I want this bear running. I'm going to have him running. So I want this kind of flow through the body. And maybe he's got there's a hip coming down in here. I know that the hip's going to come down into the thigh. And I'm going to put that thigh right under him like this. He's kind of in a trot. Bears can trot. So I'm trying to see how fluid I'm trying to be. Maybe the other foot's back here. Maybe this foot, bring that elbow way down. Maybe he's reaching with that paw. And then this one, we'll pull that shoulder up. Where am I going with this? Oh, I don't like that. I don't want to pull that arm so far up. I want to pull it out here. There. See how quickly I'm getting really gestural with it. And I want his head nice and level. So I want to get that head nice and level. It's coming down. Coming right into that nose. There we go. Maybe he's splashing up water. Running through the water like that. All that broken up fur. And squared off and around. Right down into that beard. It comes down into here, up into the ear. There's the other ear. I'm going to find that center line. I'm going to go a little smaller with my brush now. There's my nose shape. That mouth is just going to come back here. Eye. There we go. There. That comes in, comes around, and all of this kind of grows out this way. Hump, remember? Hump, hump, hump. Just like that. So you can see I start out really loose, and then I'm going to pull in, there's the chest, shoulder, chest muscles are in here. Now I can start to refine it, and I'm thinking about those shapes. There's the flexors are coming in. I want that nice round, strong shape right there for the forearm. And here also, coming up into the wrist. Now it's slightly coming towards us. There. Those claws are going to be here. And I want this one really kind of reaching down, but I love this negative shape like that. So I want to make sure I keep that open. So I might have to pull this back. I want to follow that because we're looking at it in 3/4. I want to make sure that all of my foreshortening, kind of that roundness, happens in this direction. See that? Triceps, right down into the fur. Here's a wrist right there. Fur. Just like that. There we go. Remember, it gets thinner at that wrist and then flares out a little bit, and then we can get the paws or the toes. All that fur comes down into here. Here's the knee. The pelvis, the hips. Here's the pelvis up there. Down into the calves. I'm going to plant that foot. Just like that. These flexors come up and around. There's triceps up in here, deltoids, trapezius, up around there like that. See how quickly we can do this? So now, I've quickly, and what we're going to do is we're going to indicate some of that fur kind of flying back. But maybe he's coming in, and I want to indicate that back foot back here. And if we get some nice debris coming up, yeah, maybe he's running along the river and he's looking for that little salmon, little group of salmon. But look at the hump. See the hump? If you follow it through, I'm thinking about that coming all the way around. I'm thinking about all of these overlapping shapes coming into here, just like so. So now we've got, and I'm going to erase that back now. So we get volume. You know, bears are very volumetric. And so you don't want to lose that when you're drawing your bears. Okay? So now, let me draw something underneath. There. I'm just indicating how it goes dark. We go into the dark parts underneath the bear. We get a little dark there. Keeping this nice and loose. In the face. There, you see that? Nice and dark in here. Maybe a little muscle definition. I keep everything nice and loose. A little muscle definition there. Let's get really dark in here. There, look at that. I love loose, energetic drawings. I love doing them. I love looking at them. There, so now you want to keep the integrity of that drawing. I'm going to go ahead and combine those layers. Let's lighten that up. But I'm not going to lighten it too much. I want to keep the integrity of that loose drawing. I love those loose drawings. All right, so let's get in there. And I'm not gonna I'm not going to break up the fur too much. I'll break it up in places. There we go. I want to keep all that loose integrity. I want to give it a little bit more definition, which is what I'm trying to do now. But I don't want to kill the energy of the drawing. So I'm just hitting areas that I feel like I want to chisel just a little bit. I want to define those brows a little more. I definitely want to define the eye. There we go. Just a little bit up into that. I'm going to define the volume coming off of that cheekbone, all the jaw muscle. Maybe there's a little break in here. There. Coming up, down into that lip. See, I'm just giving it just enough extra detail just to tie it down a bit, but I want to keep that looseness. There. I'm going to let all of this kind of just grow right up into there. There's that fur texture. That's about all I'm going to do. I'm going to keep it nice and loose. Let all of this come down. That's all going to come down right into the chest. There we go. Little fur change there. Maybe there's a break there, but you notice I'm not, for the for the forearm, right in here, I'm not doing a whole lot of fur breaks. I don't need it, but I do want to add some fur breaks in here. I want to define that wrist. That's important. Defining that wrist there. Getting these claws. I'm going to draw the claws first. Then I'm just going to lightly define the toes. There. That's all I need. Maybe a little break there. There we go. Now, I want to keep that energy. So I want to keep that volume too. So I'm going to come down and let this, I want this mass, which I am breaking up the fur there. Let me get that ear in there real quick. I want all this to come down, but I want to let this kind of just flow right into here. I want to feel that roundness. I'm going to lighten that up just a touch. All of that fur coming down. There we go. And that hump. There we go. Making sure that it's consistent coming around. But once again, I want to make sure that I hang on to this muscle mass because that is helping to describe that real strong volumetric form on that bear. More muscle definition in there, just like that. I'm going to let that come down. See how loose I'm being? Let that, where it comes into those flexors, I'll let that come right into the wrist. Once again, claw, 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 claw. And then I'm just going to lightly define the toes. I want to get that center line just a little more defined coming down. There we go. And then right in here, we're going to have a lot of fur coming off. All of that. But notice how I'm trying really hard to follow the volume, trying to follow the foreshortening. There we go. I'm trying to keep the life, the vitality of the drawing, of the gesture underneath. Now up here, I want to keep following that form. Coming down. And I can draw some fur going this way. This is all going to come back around. That's that belly. And rotate right into here. There we go. And we'll get a bunch of fur down into here. Keeping it loose, controlled. I'm going to finish this off just like that. There's the knee. Just do a quick indication. Break right there where that hip is, that trochanter. There's the thigh. Breaking up that fur down there. I want all of this to get nice and dark. I still want it to feel like it's going into shadow back here. There we go. Let's bring that up. There, just like that. And then back here, I'm going to indicate some fur breaks, but I'm not going to worry too much. I think I'm imagining the foot here, but I'm just going to let that just kind of darken and just darken that in. One, two, three, four, five. Coming around. Nice and loose. Whoops, that's too loose. Remember, loose but not messy. There we go. And we're going to cover that up with some water splashes. Add some fur breaks there, some fur breaks in there. Some fur there. There we go. So there's our bear running. Let's do this. Let's see what this looks like. Splash, splash, splash. I'm just doing this so loosely. There we go. This is how I do my gesture drawing. Really quick, just like this. Now maybe we can do, let's just see what this looks like. I want to get him to silhouette just a little bit against the background. So maybe we'll just give him a little lighter background. Just along here. just to give it a little more interest. There. So there's our bear running. Let me see. Yeah, I'm just going to erase some of that back. There we go. Okay, so let's do another one. Turn those guys off. Create a new layer. Let's give something a little more ferocious. Maybe one with his mouth open. And just like we did with the bear running, I want to go loose. So maybe he's up here. And I want it all to feel like it's driving in this direction. Okay? So we'll bring that neck back. Maybe his head is tilted this way. I want to bring that nose. Let's bring that nose up in here. And bears, they can really lift their mouth up. I want a big open mouth. So we'll still have that break. Like so. And we're going to see teeth coming down. I'm just very roughly indicating. Now I want to make sure I keep the same perspective. So that mouth is going to come down like this. And it's going to go right into an open mouth. We'll get the teeth in there. I'm thinking about that jaw coming back. I want to draw volumetrically. So I'm going to pull this head back. I want the head's getting a little short. I'll pull all this back. There's the eye. This brush is a little big. I'll go a little smaller. And that cheek, there's a cheekbone, and this will get a little bit hollow in here. This comes up in here like so, and then that comes up in here. And I want to get that beard kind of growing in here. And let's get those ears. Draw an ear back there. So now you can really get a sense of what we're drawing. There we go. That feels good. There. Once again, I'm going to come off that ear and come in here like this. But this fur, I want all this to be kind of growing out and this leading down into here. Remember like we did on the other ones? So I always think about it in that shape, coming off the ear, coming into the beard, and then we get more of the fur coming off the neck like that. So I'm going to move this over. I'm going to let this come right up into the hump. Nice big hump, just like that. And I want everything to kind of lead up into that head. Once again, I want to draw with volume. And I'm just kind of exploring right now. So you'll see I get kind of searching with my lines. I want to get that head or the neck nice and thick. There we go. Here's that shoulder. And actually, you know what I'd like to do? I think I want to make him feel a little more solid. So I'm going to bring that foot. Shoulder. Bring that foot right in there like that. The shoulder comes in and there's the chest. Like that. And then this foot is going to be kind of turned towards us. There we go. I'm going to bring this down. Remember, we keep that elbow down really low. Thin at the wrist, flares out, and let's turn it towards, whoops, that's really too long. Turn it toward, there we go. Just like that. That's feeling kind of good. Let that belly come down. We're going to get a bunch of fur down in there. Now here, as I'm drawing, I'm seeing that the head and neck, I think, are a little small and a little short. So I'm going to bring this out. I want to bring that out, and I'm going to increase the size. I'll pull it back just a little bit. There, that feels better. And then here, I'm just going to let this come down. We'll just increase the size of that neck. There, that feels nice. See, we get that nice shape in that forearm, that nice negative shape there. Let's pull that knee in. There we go. There's a foot there. And let's bring that other foot. I want to get a nice silhouette. So we'll bring that other foot here. Just like that. Drawing with volume. I want all of this to feel like it's coming together. So now, I've just kind of explored, I just kind of, knowing the anatomy, we can get in here and just kind of make up poses. So this is one that, I'm going to put a thing there. Let's do that. And just, I want to add a little bit of shadow in here. Just to get a sense of a little bit of silhouette. There we go. See, that feels pretty nice. And we'll come up in here. If I was animating, this would be kind of the animation drawing. I wouldn't go much more tight than this, and then I would do my animation, and then we could come back in and tie it all down. But this is how I think about it. I go very, very loose. I think in big shapes. You see these big volumes that we've got. Okay? So now I've basically got the whole bear there. Now I can just come in. Let me go ahead and darken that a little bit too. Now I can just come in and draw. So I'm going to combine those. Let's lighten it a little bit, just a bit. I want to do the same thing we did with the last drawing, and that is I want to keep the integrity, the life of the drawing. There we go. I want to keep the life of the drawing. The looseness. Whoops. There we go. So I'm going to let me just go a little darker. And that cuts back in, cuts in, and then we cut in there. There we go. And that's going to come right out into that lip. There. See what I did there? Just very, very quick, no labor. And this is all going to kind of curl back. And let's get them, I'm going to make them a little angry. I know I'm going to make them a little anthropomorphic, but I can't help it. It's the Disney in me. There we go. Give them some expression. I'm going to let these teeth come down. That upper lip just kind of come right around. They've got really, really malleable. Malleable? I don't know if malleable is the right word, but they move around really a lot, their lips. There we go. Let that come down. I really want that to feel kind of stretched out as well. There. There we go. Let that come down and right up into that brow mass. There's the head, all the muscle. There we go. And all of this is growing back. Just like that. We're going to get those lips coming down. Remember, they got those long lips on the bottom. So in here, we'll just go a little dark and maybe just cast a shadow across the tongue. There. And we'll go a little dark there, a little dark there, just to give it a little volume. All of this comes up just like that. I want to get a little detail in those eyes. Once again, there's mass right in here. The ears are coming up. And I'm going to let all of this come down. Feet, don't like that. I want it to have a little bit more volume to it. It felt flat. Let's bring it around. There we go. And all of this should feel like it's coming around. There we go. I want lots and lots and lots. I want lots and lots of volume. There. Coming up. And that goes right up into the really big shoulder blades. There we go. Trying to keep that integrity. I want the integrity, the life. of that loose drawing that I had underneath. I want to keep that alive. I want to clear out this silhouette. I want to keep everything. I want clarity and life in my drawings. I'm always looking for clarity and life. And so you'll notice I move fast. I don't want to noodle. There's always time for noodling later. But when you're laying in that groundwork, you know, if this were a drawing for a painting, you know, I want to keep this life. And when I actually do the painting, I would really strive to keep the life there as well, loosely painting. And then you go in and then all you have to do is hit a few details here and there. And then you've got a painting that has got a lot of life to it, but you can also have one that's very detailed. There we go. I'm going to come down into here, just like that. Get a little bit more darkness there. Definitely, we need more darkness in here, coming into the pectoralis muscles. All of that is going to come down. Trying to keep the life. See how quickly I'm doing this? I want to keep the life of that drawing. There's that wrist. There's a toe, and a toe there. Claw, 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 and claw. There. Just like that. This feeds right down into the wrist. All those flexor muscle coming down here. There, drawing very quickly. Now let's come back up to this neck. I want to get all of that volume. So I'm going to stay loose. Right now I'm drawing the negative spaces between the fur, and then it goes into drawing the fur. And this fur is growing this way. There. I want a strong transition from the neck into the shoulder. There we go. And I still want to indicate that shoulder a little bit, so I'll just go against some of that fur, just add that line work in there. There we go. So we'll come up, and there's deltoid, tricep, right there, and coming down into the elbow. I want that flexor to come up. Just like that. That kind of wraps around. The shoulder comes into here. There we go. And all of this, I'm going to add some broken fur. There. There we go, right down to that wrist. Let it flare out. We're going to have a toe, 3, 4, 5. Just like that. Claw, 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 da, da, da. There we go. There's your foot. Now back here, I'm going to go a little bit lighter. I want it to feel like it's going back. So I'm just not going as heavy-handed. I want to make that foot feel like it's pushed back there, or the leg, I should say. There's a knee right there. And I'm just going to lightly indicate that leg back there. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That foot kind of turned in towards us. And here, I want all this fur to make that transition coming over. It all grows in that direction, flaring out towards the outside. Keeping the volume. I'm trying very hard to keep the volume. Notice everything I do, I'm trying to, echo these overlapping big shapes, just like that, so that the volume will always be there. There we go. And then here, I'm just going to quickly, there we go, come down to the hips. I'm not going to, like we did in the back legs back here, I'm not going to go super heavy-handed with everything. I want it to feel like it's kind of receding back. So I'm going to draw some fur coming down. But we've already got, in that underdrawing, we've already got a lot of information in there. So you can see I'm just keeping it really loose. I'm going to indicate that knee. That comes down. And I'm going to start the toes going this way. Notice I'm trying to make them feel like they're turned in towards each other a little bit. Just indicating a few toes there. Here. Calf. Thigh. Right there. See, there's a little break I made there. And I want to get some volume right there. Then all of this should feel like it's fur coming down. I want to keep the life. I want to keep the life in this drawing. And let's go a little dark in there for shadow. There we go. And let's do one more bit here where I want to just add a little bit of shadow. There we go. Go a little more opaque. There. Just want to get a little bit more solidity by adding a little value here and get the drawing to feel a little more solid. I want this to feel like it goes into darker fur, so I'm going to just color this all a little darker. There we go. And actually, what I can do, there we go. I want this thing to feel nice and solid. So I'm just going to come in here and just darken them right up. I want a nice silhouette. I like the life in this drawing. Usually, so when I hit a drawing I like, then as you can tell, I'll go in there and work it. Now the key is, don't work your drawing to death. We've got nice life. It's all meant just to be a drawing. But this is our last one, so I thought, yeah, let's do something nice here. There we go. That feels good. Getting lots of life. I think we've preserved the integrity of the gesture, the looseness of the drawing. I know it's blue, but that's okay. Just adding a little bit of highlight. There we go. There, that feels good. Highlights, muscle. Highlighting some of that muscle there. There we go. There, that feels pretty good. And then just to give them something to stand on, let's just do a little something there like that. There we go. And I just want to hit, just like we did on the other drawings. Let's just give them a little bit of highlight. There we go. We'll just hit a little bit down along here. Those teeths. We get his tooths. There we go. Get a little highlight right on that eye, maybe in the corner. Just give it a little bit of life. Maybe a little bit right in there underneath, maybe a little in there. Give them a little bit of extra detail. That's what I'm talking about. You pick your places where you want to add a little detail. And I want to do it on this face. We'll pick a couple little spots in there. There we go. Maybe a couple in here. Coming up like that. Give them that light fur halo that I was talking about. Just a little bit, and a little bit along here. Keeping it loose. There. We'll just keep it simple like that. There. Okay, so that is drawing grizzly bears, the full pose. We've pretty much covered everything there is to cover on drawing grizzly bears. I hope now that you understand kind of all those simple volumes. It's the head going into that neck, going into the shoulders, going into the belly, and then the hips, so the rest of the body. We've gone over the legs. Everything's connected, everything flows. But once again, those bear forms, they're fairly simple. They're bulky, but they flow. There's fluidity to how everything comes together. Remember, start loose. Those few drawings that we did here today, remember how I started very loose, I started fluid. I wanted all those volumes to feel like they're flowing together. Remember too, if you're doing something where you're foreshortening, make sure you're overlapping those shapes. That's important. So that was grizzly bears. Why don't we go ahead and move on to the next bear?